Hey guys, this is Jim Kurtz with Organic Earth Tech, and today I want to share with you 5 unusual methods to help your plants grow faster and even in some cases healthier. Now, if you're like me, you're kind of getting impatient, right? You get all set up, you get your garden set up, you plant your seeds, and then it's just like this waiting game, right? You want your plants to kind of get going. You want to enjoy the fruits of your labor, right? But sometimes waiting those weeks can be grueling process unless you're growing sprouts or something that grow very fast. So with these tips, you should be able to grow your plants faster, in some cases almost twice as fast as you otherwise would. So but they're a little bit out of the box, thinking outside the box here. So let's get started here. The first unusual method for faster plant growth would be adding vitamins to your plants. Now, I don't mean like mineral additives and those things or fertilizer. I mean like actual vitamins. You take a multivitamin that you would see with like a Centrum or something like that. I don't want to mention brand names, but just your standard multivitamin for humans, right? All you do is take a tablet form or 2 or 3 of them and you grind them up, and then you just sprinkle the powder around your plants. Now this works really well for potted plants, or if you have indoor plants where you don't want to buy a big 20-50 pound bag of fertilizer because it's just too much, right? So what you can do with this is you can actually grind up a few vitamins, sprinkle the powder around your plant, and then water them. Now what this actually does is in a multivitamin, so you'll have B vitamins, you'll have certain substances which are good for plants as well as for humans. So it is a kind of a way to get them growing, get them some extra nutrition, especially if your soil doesn't have a lot of nutrition in it. So add a few vitamins. Now, if you've got a bigger garden, that's probably not going to be as practical because, by the time you grind up enough vitamins to create enough powder to sprinkle throughout a larger garden, you might as well just buy fertilizer at that point. So keep in mind this is more for potted plants or a few house plants if you don't want to mess with fertilizer. The next method here, which I kind of think is interesting. When I read it, I was like, wow, that's really interesting. I got this from Lifehacker, and in the comments or description, I'll actually have a link to my blog, which has all the sources for all this information. So if you want a more in-depth study of this, just go to the link on my blog here, and then that will take you to where all the source articles are. But the next one is watering with club soda. Now, I'm talking about just regular club soda, like you'd mix in a drink or something like that. Now, why does this work? Why would this help plants grow faster? Well, it turns out that club soda actually has phosphates. And one of the 3 key ingredients for plant growth is phosphorus. And if your soil doesn't have a lot of phosphorus or enough phosphorus, then it can actually inhibit plant growth. So, in fact, the 3 main ingredients your plants will need that virtually everybody agrees on is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So they call it NPK. Now, if you want to really get in depth with this, you really should do a soil test. You can actually take a sample of your soil that you're growing in, send it to a lab, and then have them analyze, and they'll tell you what you need to add to your soil. But if you don't really want to go to that level of extreme, consider just watering with club soda, because it'll add phosphorus. Also, the carbonic acid in the carbonated water will also create a little bit more carbon, which can help your plants too. So that's the second tip is water once in a while with club soda. Now, the third tip we have here is, I call this waiting for the worms, right? It's an old Pink Floyd reference, but worms are really, really good and beneficial to your garden. I'm talking about earthworms. Now, what worms do is as they burrow through the soil, they actually eat a lot of the dead plant, and even animal materials. And they convert that into high density nutrients for the soil. It's really, really good for your plants. I highly recommend, if you don't want to mess with the worms, you can also just buy worm castings. And I recommend you using the organic worm castings in your garden, because that will be more beneficial. If you want to, though, you want to do your own worms, you don't want to keep paying for worm castings over and over again, what you can do is actually just buy a couple hundred earthworms and have a little you can actually have them run through your garden even with the plants, but if you don't want to risk your plants them eating your roots or anything like that, you can also have a separate planter with nothing but earthworms. Now what you can do if you want to do all this yourself, is you put the dirt in, you put the worms in the dirt, and then you can actually take a composter, or if you have like old vegetables, old salad, parts or something like that, you can actually grind it up or chop it very, very thin and throw it into the soil. What happens is the earthworms will start eating that in addition to the soil, and obviously when they digest it, what they leave behind is a very nutrient-rich defecation. Another way, probably the best way to really get the most out of this is if you have a composter. Composter is obviously where it's usually like a little box or something where you actually have, sometimes cardboard or sometimes, old leavings, like old food and stuff like that, or whatever. What you do is you leave it in the heat, and that heat actually promotes bacterial growth. The bacteria breaks down a lot of that food material, and then you can use that in your garden. However, if you take that compost, both the liquid residue and what's left after the bacteria breaks down that compost, you can actually put it into your worm bed and have the worms process this. It's called vermiculture. It's very, very beneficial because the worms are going to break down that material even further and leave you with just a nice dark black nutrient-dense soil that you can spread on your plants. It's an incredible fertilizer. Again, if you don't want to mess with the worms, I just go get worm castings. You can get them on Amazon or in your local nursery. A very, very highly nutritious and beneficial additive to your garden that will help your plants grow faster. Now, the next one is a little bit out of the box, you might say, in terms of how to help plants grow faster, and that's talking to or singing to your plants. Now, you may have heard back, for years, people have talked about this. In fact, it kind of became popular in the 60s and 70s, about talking to your plants and playing music for your plants. It was featured in a book called The Secret Life of Plants. But there's actually been a lot of research done. In fact, recently, within the last 10 years, a research study by the South Korea's National Institute of Agricultural Biosciences did some studies on plant responses to light. And what they found is certain types of music and even in conversational talking to plants actually helps them become more receptive to light. Other studies that are ongoing and have been done suggested that plants are sensitive to vibration, mainly because it's an indicator of wind. So you vibrate the plants in a certain way for example, with music or with talking to your plants. It can actually stimulate those processes in plants that make them grow faster and stronger. Perhaps from a biological standpoint, to resist the wind, being damaged by wind. But in the case of growing, obviously, it'll help them grow faster. Now, there's actually a lot more research. In fact, I did an ebook, and it's in the final editing stage now. I did an ebook which cataloged over 100 years of research into the effects of sound waves and sound frequencies, both in terms of music and talking to them and other things, on the development of plants. And there's a lot of research there. So when that book comes out, I'll be sharing that with you guys, and be sure to check that out. The next wonderful method of plant growth is miracle plants. Now, this is actually a product that my company is distributing. In fact, it just launched about a couple of weeks ago officially. But the miracle plants is a small device. It's about the size of a nickel, and it goes into your plants. It attaches to your faucet or your hose nozzle, anything like a metal faucet device. What happens is when you water this, it sends frequencies into the water, these sound waves into the water. Now, our researcher and the inventor of this device, Fulvio Baumelli in Italy, actually studied plants for over 12 years, and he was able to isolate the exact frequencies that plants need to grow healthy and strong. So on our original test, we've had lettuce that grows from 45 days down to 32 days. We've seen other plants grow. I had some wheatgrass, for example, that grew in 10 days. It grew double the size. So basically, cut the growth time in half. And we've seen some other results too, in terms of both growing faster and growing stronger. So if you really want a scientific, more exact method, get the Miracle Plants device. You can go to gardenersareawesome.com and order a device. It's It's very inexpensive, especially compared to fertilizers and pesticides and that kind of stuff. But go check it out. Gardenersareawesome.com. The Miracle Plants device will give you the exact frequencies, not just singing or talking to your plants, but the exact frequencies they need to grow healthy and strong and faster. So that's my next one. And then a couple of honorable mentions here. I call them honorable, one, because the first one I'm going to mention here, which is adding coffee grounds, especially used coffee grounds to your garden and your soil. Now, the reason why this works is coffee grounds are very rich in nitrogen. Now, if you spray dry coffee grounds, it's going to make your soil very acidic. So that can actually damage a lot of different plants depending on what their pH needs are and what the pH of your soil is. However, if you use used grounds, for example, if you brew coffee and then take the grounds and put those in your garden, the fact that water is flowing through it and it's been brewed through will actually help your plants. It will be more pH neutral. But you can get these coffee grounds at your local Starbucks or your local coffee shop. You just ask for them, hey, do you have any used coffee grounds that I can use for my garden? I know Starbucks has had a program for many years called Grounds for Your Garden, which basically just take it. It's a waste product for them. So instead of wasting it, you're able to go and pick up. I usually call, 2 or 3 of my local coffee shops and just say, hey, do you have any grounds for your garden that I can use? And they'll usually say, yeah, come on by. Or sometimes they'll say, well, come by tomorrow. We'll save some for you. It's a free for you, waste product for them, so it's less garbage that goes into the garbage and landfills, and it's really good for your garden. High in nitrogen, high in certain nutrients, very, very beneficial to your garden. And another one that I'm going to mention to you here is biochar. Now, I've heard good things and I've heard some bad things in terms of biochar, and I think the bad things more has to do with how the biochar is produced. Now, biochar should be produced without catching it on fire. Now, what biochar is basically charcoal of plant material. So if you have trees or bark or anything like from old trees that get combusted, you don't want it to combust and turn into flames. But if you heat it up to 400 or 500 degrees Celsius, what it will do is start to break down and create a charcoal. Now, if you go above 700 degrees Celsius, it can actually catch on fire, and then it will send smoke and various things into the air, which is not good for the environment. But biochar that's produced with the correct processes will not catch on fire, but will actually just kind of smolder, and it will turn that material into a charcoal. The charcoal itself has a lot of carbon, a lot of nutrients that are very beneficial to your garden. And I highly recommend using it. I've had a lot of gardeners swear by it, including Dr. Mercola is a very famous nutritionist, and he recommends it as far as helping plants grow faster. I haven't tried it myself, that's why I give it an honorable mention, but you can try it out in your garden. And I have a couple people that are going to do some testing for us, and when that comes through, I'll let you know. I'll put it in the comments here, or I'll do another video. But that's all I really got, guys. Those are some 5 unusual methods with a couple of extra bonuses. I hope that it helps you. Feel free to use any of these. If you want to do more research, as I said, just click on the link below on my blog article. I have all the articles where I got my information from. You can read the full articles. And also, just like I said before, check out gardenersareawesome.com. Order your Miracle Plants device, because that's going to give you the exact tools that you need in addition to fertilizing your soil and making sure your soil is good, and your garden will be growing in no time. So I wish you the best of luck, and we'll